Hello there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 246. Your weekly little get-together. We talk about recent gaming news. I'm, as always, your host, Stephen Brown, and joining me today is...
I'm David.
David, tonight we're coming back from the holidays with very little news, but we'll also be going over our best and worst moments in gaming of 2020. And yes, that year actually had some good moments to it, despite what you might think.
I had at least a couple.
At least a few. David, how did your holidays go, by the way?
Slow,
Slow?
quiet.
Quiet? Okay. Not bad, not bad. Hopefully relaxing. Hopefully get some time in, just kind of chill out a bit.
Yeah, mostly.
Good. More or less the same here. Didn't do anything all that big. Wife got me a Ace Combat themed gift. Really love it. There's pictures of it above the Discord if you guys want to see it. But I really just kind of kicked back for the most part this holiday. What was I gonna say? Yeah, that's that.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. So let me just get back into the rigmarole here. I want everyone to know here.
What do I do with my hands?
This is an audience interactive podcast, by the way. So as we start talking with our best and worst moments, you feel free to join in the conversation, especially if you're here live at twitch.tv/GamePoints. But if you're not here live, you can do so down in the comments below later at youtube.com/GamePointsPC. David, let's go ahead and get right into the news. We don't have much news to go through. I've got two stories here. One story I want to mention real quick that's not on this list. It was something I was going to lead with on the show last week, but I decided just to not do it because, well, holidays and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But the inevitable has happened with Cyberpunk and specifically CD Projekt. They are being sued by their investors. And that's roughly all we know about the lawsuit going on right now. CD Projekt is being sued by their investors, not by gamers or anything like that. People that own stock in the company saying that they were misled. CD Projekt has come out and said they will defend themselves against any lawsuit, and that is the extent of what we know about that. And we're not going to probably hear anything else about it for quite a while. We'll see how that shakes out. But that is old news. Let's go ahead and move into the two. Yes, a grand and glorious two news stories to have to talk about this week as the gaming industry slowly wakes back up from its holiday slumber. First, looks like we are seeing the beginning of the end of the PlayStation 4 itself, and that all but one model of the PlayStation 4 is now to be discontinued. This story is via Video Game Chronicle. Via Video Game Chronicle, I should say. As reported by Japanese publication Game Watch, the only last-gen console Sony will continue to sell in Japan is the standard jet black 500GB PlayStation 4 Slim model. All other PS4 consoles will disappear once current stock is sold, the publication reports, and the SIE will divert production to the PlayStation 5. There is currently no confirmation of whether the PS4 Pro will be discontinued in Western markets. However, last month, the official PlayStation US store briefly stated that it would no longer offer PlayStation 4 Pro consoles for sale.
That seems so weird to me that they would get rid of the Pro, but I think it's on purpose to make the difference between last gen and the current gen even more apparent.
I think so too. I was thinking about this, and I realized that if you're going to spend the money on the Pro, you might as well spend, because when you have the generation shift, right? When you have the jump between one console and the next, your previous generation console tends to go significantly cheaper. And there is a group of people out there who then buy that console for the first time ever. They just wait till the new one's out. So they're always like a generation behind, right? Because the PlayStation 4 or 3 or 2, whatever it is, you figure it drops with $100 or $200 very in quick order as it slowly gets phased out. But if you're already in that boat, you wouldn't be buying the PlayStation 4 Pro to begin with.
Yeah.
And the people who would be wanting a PlayStation 4 Pro, because they
probably
would want
a PS5.
They would want the high-end tech. Why wouldn't they just buy a PlayStation 5 at that point? So the consumer market for the PlayStation 4 Pro doesn't exist anymore, in my opinion. So I get why they're discontinuing that. I wanted to stress that they are still going to keep selling the PlayStation 4. What we're seeing everywhere, I specifically used the headline, the death of the PlayStation 4, because that's what everyone else is doing, but it's not really the death of it. The PlayStation 4 is still in active production. It's just not the Pro. It's specifically only that one model of PlayStation.
Well, I mean, and this has happened to every single PlayStation come before it, right? There was a point in time where the only PlayStation you could get was the PS1, all lowercase, the little guy,
Yeah.
because that was the SKU that was still available, and it was the cheapest when the PS2 was out.
Mm-hmm.
PS2 had a Slim at some point. That was the only one you could buy. It's just, it's par for the course. It makes sense. It's what they're going to do. It's the only reason it's interesting this time around is because we had that strange mid-generation console refresh, and it's, everyone's kind of still coming to terms with that. So we get, the smallest, cheapest version of the last gen console, and that's what it's going to be.
It's also weird though, because when the PlayStation 1 came out, when that PlayStation Slim 2 came out, they were the newer hardware. This is them selling not the oldest hardware, but not the newest hardware for the previous generation either.
Mm-hmm.
They're like a step back, which I do think is odd, but also explainable if you just think about it. One thing I will note is that they are taking all these resources and now diverting it to the PS5. So if you're one of those people that are thinking about dropping like $700 to buy a secondhand PS5, not secondhand, but like a aftermarket PS5 or an eBay, Amazon PS5, just wait a little bit. You're going to have the shelves open up in good form. I think this is not going to be a Wii Switch. I keep calling it the goddamn Wii. This is not going to be a Switch situation. Console's been out for like 4 goddamn years. I still call it the goddamn Switch. Or the goddamn Wii.
Oh, man. Just wait another 6 months when you have to refer to the old version of the Xbox. I can't wait for you to try and get through that one.
This is not going to be a situation that we had with the Switch where it was like a year before we could find those again, because Nintendo was deliberately holding back on that to create falsified demand. They're going to flood the market with PlayStations as quickly as they can, in my opinion. I could be wrong. But if you can't find one right now, just wait a little bit and don't buy one from a scalper. Just wait a little bit and you should start seeing them.
Please don't give your money to scalpers. Just don't do it. Fuck those guys.
David, we got one more news story, and it's a kind of a minor news story, but I'm mentioning it because it ties in with both one of the topics of the best and worst gaming moments this year for my list, as well as one of my predictions on next week's list. And that is that Nintendo is buying Next Level Games. Now, a couple things I want to mention with this. One, I don't recall Nintendo ever buying too many third-party organizations. It just doesn't happen all that often.
That's not a normal Nintendo thing.
It has happened before, but I don't recall any time in the past year or so.
It's not a common Nintendo thing. How's that?
If you don't know who Next Level Games are, these are the guys that developed Luigi's Mansion 3, Punch-Out for the Wii, Super Mario Strikers, and all of its forms. And they've been working exclusively with Nintendo since 2014, so for all intents and purposes, they were already a second-party studio. They're just now a first-party studio. And I really enjoyed that Wii Punch-Out. I really enjoyed Luigi's Mansion 3. I think Next Level Games does some great work, and I'll be very curious to see if anything actually changes from this. And this is not like a partial buyout, by the way. It's 100% control of shares of this company. So they are now wholly a Nintendo-owned studio.
That's crazy.
So go Next Level Games. I look forward to seeing what you got right now. The big topic, of course, this week is going to be our best and worst moments in 2020 gaming. Before we get into that, I do want to mention that going on right now, Awesome Games Done Quick is on Steam. This is essentially the week-long speed run for charity thing going on. They have their schedule posted on. They do some amazing runs. Apparently, there is a really bitchin' Hades run where what they do in the Hades speedrun community is they pick 3 different weapons and try to run it as fast as they can. And I haven't seen it, but I'd be willing to bet that in the time it takes me to do 1, they can do 3.
Yeah, I've been following that stuff. They can get... there's actually a lot of different speedruns, because the one that's most interesting to me is the Fresh Start speedrun. So it's from a completely fresh save. You have no access to items, to boons, to... It's literally your very first playthrough of the game, so you only have the basic sword. Half the items aren't even unlocked. And those are the fun ones for me, because it's ridiculous that you can even do it.
Yeah. Those people do some amazing things. I was watching the Metal Gear Solid 4 one last night or the night before, one or the other, and they did some wacky-ass shit in that, too. It's worth taking a look at if you like speedrunning. Of course, that would be running on Twitch all this week until Saturday, Friday? One of those days. But
one of these days.
Give it a look. All right. let's go into the main topic of the show here: best and worst gaming moments of 2020. Some criteria for those of you playing at home. And remember, I would love to hear what your best and worst moments were down below or in the comments if you're watching us live. This is not a list of our favorite games.
Although, full disclosure, mine has a couple games on it.
They can be games, however. They absolutely can be games. But it's overall just moments. For example, let's use something that I picked last year, Control. Control was not one of my favorite games of last year. But there is a sequence in that game that I'll just refer to as the ashtray maze. Anyone who's played Control knows what I'm talking about. That sequence was one of the best moments I had with a video game that entire year. It can be moments in video games. It can be news stories that happened. It can be events that happened. It can be announcements. It can be anything that you found particularly exciting or despairing in 2020. Good and bad. I have 6 good, 4 bad. I want to start with the good, and then we'll get into the bad after that. Does that sound reasonable to you, David?
Sure.
All right. How many good moments do you have?
I can kind of make it work, but I will admit that my list is more bad than good.
All right, then I will start off. I have roughly 6. I'm sure that you probably. How many good moments do you have? 3, 4, 2?
Yeah, of the actual moments, I have 3, and then I have a few games I want to shout out.
Okay. Well, let's start off right now with a game. And I'm going to lead us off here. And that game is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Because it does not sound like something most people will be into. But it's essentially a Japanese, very anime-esque sci-fi story that has every single science fiction trope you can think of in it. And I do mean every single science fiction trope. It is almost like the sci-fi version of Cabin in the Woods.
Okay, cool.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
It features aliens, time travel, kaiju, anything you could think of in the sci-fi art is thrown to this game. But it makes it work. And I was surprised with a game that is literally 80% visual novel for all intents and purposes. I was surprised how much I love this game. And the epilogue brought a smile to my face. It was one of the most satisfying epilogues I have ever seen in a video game. And I cannot recommend it enough. In a year of just horribly grim video games, even the 2020 aside, let's not talk about the year of 2020 itself as a whole. In a year of 2020 gaming, the way 13 Sentinels ended was like a bright spot in a sea of grimdark universes. And I was very happy with how it all wrapped up. And I have never seen anything where I was confused as to what the hell is going on for like 65% of it. And then one piece of information falls into place and then click. Everything just made sense. I'm like, son of a bitch. Not just they Deus Ex Machina away. There's some of that in there. But when it clicks, I go, suddenly this all makes sense. And I'm no longer screaming about why this shit is unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is still some unrealistic shit in there. You have to suspend your disbelief on some things. But they did a really good job of misdirection and misleading me until I finally went, oh, I get it now. And that feeling is so rare for me these days.
That's fun.
They did something really good with that. And I will have to say that was probably one of my favorite moments of gaming this year so far.
Well, my first one... Honestly, you knew it was coming. Everybody who's watched this show knew it was coming because it's the only fucking game I've talked about really the entire year. And of course, I'm going to lead my portion with it.
Yeah.
Half-Life Alyx is the greatest gaming moment and game I've experienced in a long damn time. I don't just mean 2020. I could probably stretch it back for like 10 years. Everything you love about the Half-Life franchise is there, except for it has a ridiculous hurdle to actually play the damn thing and that you require a beastly computer and VR support.
Not just VR support, but $1,000, essentially, $1,000 rig to run it. By the way, hey there, Mike No Play. How you doing?
But it's everything you loved about the franchise, and for honesty's sake, it's basically Half-Life 3, except for the fact that it's a prequel to 2. But as far as a continuation and an expansion of the series, it really has that moment in that it has cool physics-based puzzles. It's got the super strong voice acting, the narrative, the pacing, the timing of everything. Being spooked out of your mind and then seeing some like ridiculously beautiful thing. It's it's all there. It's all very Half-Life. But the fact that it's happening in first person and it is happening to you it's the most immersive video game I've ever damn played. The one of the very very first things you do at this very start of the game is you've got a little pal that's in a jar, and there's a little thing of food there, and you could just pick it up and dump it into the jar, and he gets all excited and starts eating. And it was just a dumb little throwaway, extra piece to the game that blew my mind.
I was thinking you were going to go somewhere with that. And it just sounds like I could see how that itself, though, in VR would just be entertaining. Which brings me to what I wanted to mention. Half-Life Alyx did make my list. Now, I will say, I have not played it. But the reason why it's making my list is because Half-Life Alyx has finally showed us what a AAA VR game can do.
Yes, I am anxiously awaiting for more companies to go all in VR in the way that Valve did for Alyx. And there's just a ton of little moments that I could probably throw out. I don't want to spoil anything, but one of my favorite things that happened in this game, I'll just throw this one out, is I was creeping around on a catwalk, going really slow, trying not to spook any of the enemies below me. And I had to go around to climb down a ladder so I could go fight all these things. But I'd found a box of grenades, and in the catwalk, there was about a 6-inch gap between the catwalk that I was on the brick wall next to me. And I sat there and I thought about it, and I took the grenade and I armed it, and I took my arm and I put it over the railing and dropped it. And sure enough, it dropped between me and the wall, underneath the catwalk, bounced and killed the guy below me. And
God damn.
that's not something I've ever been able to do. Like, yes, you can get tricky with other video games and, you can aim it and bounce it off the wall and you do something like this. But this is a literal, I dropped something on somebody. I mean, obviously the game let me do it, but it's not necessarily the way you were supposed to. They want you to go have this big gunfight and do this thing. And you can kind of feel the way the game's railroading you, except for it doesn't. There's just so much stuff you can do to get around things. And at the end of the day, it's still a fairly linear Half-Life game.
You know what's amazing is that every time you talk about the things you love in this game the most, it is the most mundane of shit. But it's the most mundane of shit that we have never been able to do in a video game.
Yep. And that's the thing. That's what gets you. I mean, there's really cool set piece story moments. There's, rad looking explosions. The game looks great. There's ridiculous particle effects if your rig can handle it. But it's the little things. And the little things are what make it so damn immersive.
Is there anything else you want to add about your Half-Life Alyx moments before you move on?
Just if you get a chance, if you have a friend that has a computer and a VR headset, just play the damn game. Just get it done.
For sure. David, as we move on to our best and worst moments of gaming 2020, this is where I go off, and it's not really a video game. It's just something that happened that I thought was immensely wholesome. I loved every bit of it. I got tickled pink of it. And it's so rare for us to see two completely opposite communities join together in a moment of camaraderie. And we saw it earlier this year. And that is the fact that Doom and Animal Crossing both shared the same release date. And the memes that spawned from it. Where you have Isabel inviting the Doom guy into her cabin and cooking him dinner. And then you have the Doom guy taking out Isabel to learn how to use a shotgun. Something about that particular moment, which in a community that loves to get into fights over the most mundane of shit, it was so refreshing to see two diametrically opposed video games have their fans come together and just make glorious meme magic together.
It was like a perfect storm, right? Because you had two groups of gamers that aren't necessarily trying to play the other game. Like, those games aren't in competition with each other. No. Yes, I'm sure there's plenty of people that played both, But for the most part, you were excited about one or the other. And just the fact that both communities just kind of rallied together and made it just a glorious celebration day, yeah, that was pretty delightful.
I loved it so much. It is so rare just to see something that is that wholesome in video games. And I got a couple more of them on this list. 2020 actually had a lot of very wholesome moments, as we will get into later. And of course, you can share what your favorite moments are down in the chats below. David, why don't you lead us off on the next one?
So I'll give you another moment that really it's not a single thing, but it's something that let me think that the industry is kind of growing. And honestly, that was the fact that we got Sony games on PC. Specifically,
Okay.
Horizon Zero Dawn showing up, Death Stranding showing up. This is stuff that we've never really got to experience before of, proper PlayStation games being available on not the PlayStation. And just there's a million things you can get mad at Sony for, but this to me is like a step in the right direction because we've talked about the Sony hubris and like the, oh man, they're not taking the next gen thing serious, and it's Microsoft's war to win and all this. And this is just they didn't have to do it. They could have gone forever with never doing it. But I was so damn excited when it happened. I remember just being stoked, like, oh my god, and I legitimately stopped playing Death Stranding to wait for it to come out on a computer because I wanted to play it, higher frame rates, higher resolution.
And you ended up buying that game twice.
I did. They absolutely got my money twice.
Yeah, no, I get it. I am very happy to see what is normally a very doctrine-based Sony, where they are like, this is the way we have done it, this is the way we will always do it, that is the end-all be-all, and nothing else will change that. Breaking in certain aspects and finally going, okay, maybe we should take a look at what everyone else is doing and maybe hop on some of those trains. Because Sony is very rigid in its ideology, and they have been for years.
Mm-hmm.
To see them kind of loosening up the purse strings a little bit on that and going, okay, maybe we can afford to have this on PC, I think speaks very well to seeing even more games showing up on Steam. The question is, will they ever be day and date, or will they be like Death Stranding and Horizon, where roughly a year after the fact? Also, keep in mind, Death Stranding, while published, I believe, by Sony, was not made by a Sony first party. Kojima
True.
Kojima Productions is not owned by Sony. Guerrilla is, the guys who made Horizon. They are. So I would take that more as the benchmark. But the fact that they both made their way to PC.
Who owns Quantic Dream?
No one owns Quantic Dream.
Okay.
Quantic Dream and Sony used to have a very cozy relationship, but that has since fallen out, and Scuttlebutt has fallen out horribly.
I kind of count all of their games showing up as also being that, because they were PlayStation exclusives.
Yeah, they had, from what I understand, they have had a very nasty behind-the-scenes breakup.
That's fair.
And a lot of it, I think, stems from David Cage himself. But I have nothing official to say on that other than the occasional rumor that I might hear. David?
Yes.
You played a little bit of this. I think you know where I'm coming from when I say this. The game itself is all right, but the nostalgia I got from playing that goddamn PS5 pack-in of Astro's Playroom. The game itself, so Astro's Playroom is the pack-in game with PlayStation 5, and it is a very simplistic platformer where you play the little Astro bot and you go around. Essentially, the world is inside your PlayStation 5, and you're doing typical platforming
Perfectly
things.
Serviceable 3D platformer,
Yes.
For sure.
What made it so stand out to me is that entire game is a celebration of the history of PlayStation. There are so many weird little collectibles that harken back to some of the oddest devices the PlayStation had, like the iToy, the memory card, the wireless adapter, the stupid little Tamagotchi pet that was only in Japan. And as you're playing through it, there's a bunch of these little Astrobot. What an Astrobot is think like a little adorable spaceman, and you're kind of on the right track. And you'll see them acting out various scenes of games, from Final Fantasy VII to Silent Hill to Resident Evil, Wipeout, Ape Escape. There's all these references going back to the early days of PlayStation, including some extremely obscure one. And if there is anything that I love, it is reference humor, reference jokes, references to other things. This game felt like it was tailor-made to me with some of the shit going on in the background. And much like the Doom Animal Crossing story, how I just smiled every time I saw a new meme, I smiled every time I saw something that made me go, oh yeah, Intelligent Cube was a thing. Oh yeah, that's right. That's gotta be Drake climbing up the wall there for Uncharted. And I just adored that game from top to bottom. Now it's not a great game. This falls in that category of it's not one of my favorite games this year, but I had an amazing time playing it. And if you have access to PlayStation 5, and yes, Mike No Play, I was able to get a PlayStation 5. I actually lucked out. I just randomly checked Target's online link and it just happened to be in there.
It's still the most ridiculous bullshit story I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
I sat down and I went, I wonder if Target has any. And I clicked on it and I'm like, oh, Target, like, for pre-order. And I clicked it and it's like, Target has it. And like, okay. Like, I didn't even think about doing it.
You lucked out and randomly sat down during the one of the times where they had their like 3-minute recycle and you got it.
Yeah. I wasn't even planning on getting a PlayStation 5. But I figured, you know what? While I have a chance of it, I could just choose to cancel my pre-order later if I want. And I didn't. I just kept it anyways. But yes, Mike No Play. I did get a PlayStation 5 there. And I would highly recommend anyone who has access to it and has not done so, just take a look at Astrobot's Playroom. It is surprisingly competent at demonstrating what the PlayStation 5 can do. It is a surprisingly competent platformer for being free with the PlayStation 5.
And it really shows off that cool controller.
Yes, it just shows off the dual sense controller very well with how it runs. But the nostalgia factor is what really sold that for me. And it was worth my time going through it. And it's a quick playthrough. You can do it in like 2 hours.
There you go.
You're up on deck, David.
All right, so my next one is kind of funny, but I want to talk about Twitch and Among Us as a moment in gaming.
You are literally saying what my next one was going to be, so we'll just combine them right here.
So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to talk about the exact same moment that you are, because Among Us is a game that came out over a year ago and yet still showed up on like 2020 best of lists, right? Because this game did not come out in 2020. It just found popularity and regained or gained for the first time an audience, a huge, huge audience entirely due to streamers.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing. But I'll let you talk more about that. The thing I wanted to mention is that it got so huge that despite how you feel about it, a U.S. congressperson played a video game on Twitch. And that was ridiculous. I put it on my list.
My political misgivings to that particular person aside, I will say that was actually really cool. And that is one of those things that helped legitimize moments. And it was still going to be something that I mentioned, because regardless of what side of the aisle I feel on that political debate, seeing an actual sitting U.S. Representative play a game on Twitch that brought in massive popularity, that in itself is just a good thing.
Right? That was flipping awesome.
I want more of that. That was cool. My Among Us, however, moment isn't so much that particular part, but the story that you alluded to earlier. The fact that this game was out for almost 2 years. They were already in development of making the second one. They were like, okay, we're just going to do a second one, go from here. And then a few streamers picked it up 2 years after the fact, or a year and a half after the fact, started playing it. And it took off like wildfire. And this team of like what was 3 just now increased to 4. I can only imagine how good it must feel to be any one of those 3/4 people right now.
Right, and then there was the whole, hey, the game hardly works. They got so ridiculously popular that the code couldn't handle it, and their lobbies kept crashing. And they're like, sorry, guys, we need to turn the game off. We were going to fix all this in the second one, and they decided, screw it, we're not going to make a second one. They buckled down. They took like 2 days and just fixed the game, and now it just works.
Yes, so yeah, absolutely Among Us, just all of it included. There hasn't been a bad story to come from that. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. I'm trying not to like just loudly hiccup on my mic here. I have one more great moment, because that more or less was one of mine right there, and I had a feeling that might be the other one. But my final one is just what my favorite game of the year so far is, and that is Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, all right.
From start to end, I have not seen a video game more beautiful than that game.
It is quite pretty.
There is like when I finally rolled credits on it a couple nights ago, and I got legitimately emotional at the end of that game
Like finishing a
because
good book.
yeah, there is no way in hell that I'm going to state an opinion as fact. I'm opening this up right now. There is no way in hell that The Last of Us deserves all the acclaim it had in the year that we had Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh,
And
got him.
I am more convinced now than I have been that The Last of Us won everything that it did solely because of the people who made it. It is the Breath of the Wild Horizon Zero Dawn conundrum that we had back when that game came out.
Okay.
I feel the same way about this. Once again, I fully admit that is opinion stated as fact. I can see that, but it is a hill I'm willing to die on.
You know, if we're gonna state opinions as facts, I might as well throw out the fact that I also have a game that I think was better than Last of Us 2.
Okay. And to address chat, I played it first part of it. I played it on a PlayStation 4 Pro, but when the PlayStation 5 came out, I played the rest of it on PlayStation 5. I would say it was 2/3 on PlayStation 5. So I'm sure that definitely helped my opinion of it. Because
Right?
load times were
Running silky
significantly
smooth and-
improved on that.
Yeah, I've been playing it on PS4, and I still think that game looks fantastic.
But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, just from the way the leaves fall, it goes from moments of serenity to moments of brutality and back again seamlessly.
It's got a good combat system. It's got a ridiculously stellar photo mode, which didn't even need to be there, but it is.
No. And there is a point in the game, since I believe you just recently picked this up, I won't spoil what it is, but there is a point in the game where you truly become the ghost. And watching people run was one of the most satisfying moments I had in this year. I want to get into more detail about it, but I know you specifically just got this game.
Yep.
So
I buy
don't,
games late when they're cheap.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail about it. But you gain a new ability, and it becomes a signature ability. And it is just how they introduced it, and that entire sequence that follows was goddamn cool. And that roughly wraps up my good moments for 2020. Do you have any more, David?
I do. I have one more moment, but since we're still talking about video games, what I was mentioning in my game that definitely beat Last of Us is fucking Hades.
Yeah.
Hades is a game that, yes, Half-Life Alyx is my game of the year, but Hades in any other year would have taken it. And if, as far as games that everybody can play, Hades is definitely on the list because, you don't need a VR headset. It's completely gorgeous. The soundtrack's amazing. What's his name? Daniel Korb is just phenomenal through and through. Also, shout out to Ashley Birch. I think is that her name?
No, it's not Ashley Birch and Hashley. It's
I think it's actually something.
God damn it. I can't remember her name. Logan Cunningham's a lot of voices, and he's the voice of Hades itself. But
Actually, Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett. She's the other singer of the game, I believe.
Yes. And she has been for all of the...
Yeah. The thing about Supergiant Games is most of the voice acting and most of the singing are just done by people who are actively on staff.
Mm-hmm. But it's just a game that was tremendously polished. It really made me fall in love with the roguelike formula. And I've played a million of them, right? I've always been like a platformer roguelike enjoyer, but this was the game that really turned me around to the genre. And, dude, I'm 2 achievements away from 100%ing this game.
God damn.
And you know me. I don't finish video games.
No, you play.
I have not beat an open world video game since Saints Row 3.
You have like this timer in you. Once you hit like hour 20, you're done.
Yeah, I'm weird. I know people make fun of it. It is what it is. But I have like 100 hours in Hades. I love this game front to back, and yeah, it's damn good.
On the Hades discussion, I will say you have 100 hours into it. I guarantee you, I can promise you, and you can confirm this, but I'm just letting people know. I know what you're going to say. You're probably still uncovering new lines of dialogue in that game and new little plot points to discover, aren't you?
I think I'm very close to not having anything new to discover, but I've yet to hear a repeated line of dialogue.
After 100 hours in.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't sound that big to people who might not have played Hades, but if you have played any kind of roguelike, you will start realizing just how impressive that is when you
there's just a ridiculous amount of stuff. They did so much voice acting, and it's just so clean.
Mm-hmm. I'm willing to bet most people that played Hades only hear about a third of it.
Yep.
If that, maybe even less. All right, David.
All right. So the last positive moment, though, that I had to shout out is something that happened earlier in the year that I feel like still didn't get enough love. And I know you remember it. The damn Minecraft library project.
Oh, fuck. I actually forgot about this. Was that this year?
That was absolutely this year.
Jesus Christ.
I actually went back and found it from our old notes. We had talked about it earlier in the year. This was a huge deal where basically Reporters Without Borders, Blockworks, DBD, Berlin created the Uncensored Library. It's a place you can visit within Minecraft to read the works of censored journalists from Russia, Mexico, Egypt, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, other places. So unlike websites or personal blogs, Minecraft is available in a lot of countries that normally control what you can read, what you can see. And these people put together a huge repository of information that's accessible because it's in a server in Minecraft. You can go in. They've republished all these books, so you can actually just learn things that you're not supposed to know in all of these places, and it is incredible. It was a huge ordeal. So many people worked on this project, and that, I think, was my single greatest gaming moment of the year.
I completely forgot that was this year. I swore it was last. I was thinking about that, and I was like, no, there's no way that was last year. And I didn't bother to look it up because I was so convinced it was last year.
No,
just to show you how long this fucking year has been.
this year was a huge, long amount of time, but I'm pretty sure I'd have to pull it up again. But this is from like one of our January or February shows. Like This is before the world ended.
Fair enough. So yeah, I do remember that. That if you don't know anything about this, look up the Minecraft Library project. It is something to behold. It is really goddamn cool.
Yeah, I think you can just Google like Minecraft Uncensored Library, and that'll give you a rundown. And yeah, it's just flipping cool.
All right, David.
Yes.
Talked about the good.
Oh boy.
Talked about the bad. And let's just get this out the gate because
we could spend the rest of the show on this, and we're not going to. So we're telling you now.
Because we've been talking about it for the past few weeks, even before we kind of went on hiatus for a couple weeks there, and that's the clusterfuck that is Cyberpunk.
Absolutely.
And do you have anything you really specifically want to call on it? Because I think I could just point to it and go, that, and I'm done.
So yes, we could shut on Cyberpunk and everything that's wrong with it, but I actually needed to talk to you, and I forgot to ask you before the show. But that video game, this isn't bad, has a reference to Gone in 60 Seconds, the Nicolas Cage movie.
What?
Yeah. I saw it the other day. It made me laugh out loud. Because people will randomly send you messages of like buying a new car, and one of the cars has a name that sounds eerily similar to Shelby Cobra.
Okay.
And the description is formerly owned by a carjacker from Memphis named Nicholas.
Okay. All right. I take that back. This game's no longer on the list.
Yeah, dude, right? I laughed my ass off at that. It was amazing. So anyway, shout out to Memphis Reigns, Nicky Cage's character from Gone in 60 Seconds.
We can't have this list without mentioning Cyberpunk, but I don't want to spend 25 minutes bashing Cyberpunk. We have spent the past few shows talking about all the problems that is. It is a dead horse at this point. We all know it exists. Let's move on. David, you have more bad moments than good than I think. I've got 3 of them that I want to talk about. I think you have more, so why don't you lead us off?
I got a couple. One, I'm assuming that's on both of our lists that I'll start it off with, is just the clusterfuck that is hardware releases in 2020.
That's not on my list.
You didn't put it on.
No.
From the consoles coming out to all of the new GPUs, it has just been kind of the worst year to be a fan of video games. And I don't mean as far as playing it. I mean of the people that want to get the new thing. And
between the crypto miners and the COVID distribution issues, to the gobbling up of all the same chips that both consoles use by phone companies. It has
I
been difficult, to say
cannot
the
for the
least.
life of me remember a time where it was harder to buy new hardware.
Yes.
This is by far the worst it's ever been. And the whole like Ethereum mining and all that shit notwithstanding, because it's been a problem for a while. Graphics cards are really hard to get. It's just so much worse than I remember.
I just found out
And the
my
fact
10. By
that
the way, I found out my 1080 that I've had in my computer for like 5 years now. At this point, I think is more expensive now than it was when I first bought it, when it was new, like brand new, day of.
it's insane. It doesn't make any sense at all. And the companies that make the products don't give a shit because they're still selling units.
Yeah.
And it's so disappointing. I mean, I would love to see a PS5 in my house. I would love to have a new damn graphics card because mine still starts with a 9. um and yeah, it's so rough and it sucked for so many people. I mean, I know you got a PS5. I know one person that has a 30 series graphics card, and that is it. That is the list in a time when we all should, right?
Yeah. I will still call out that it's
Gaming,
still fucking hilarious that I
gaming
just stumbled into a
sales
PS5.
went through the roof this year because everyone was stuck at home,
Yes.
and then no one got to play with the new toys, and it just sucks.
Fair enough. Yeah, that did not make my list. I didn't even consider it. It didn't even pop in my head, but that is a damn
That's
good
the
one.
only thing I thought about when you asked me what's your best and worst moments of gaming of this year. I said the fact that I still don't have a 30 series graphics card on my computer. Absolutely the worst.
The official first on my list, Cyberpunk aside, is the implosion of Mixer.
Oh yeah.
This was after they had all these high-profile names joining Mixer with millions of dollars of contracts being signed, and then not even mere months after it happened, it was just unceremoniously shut down. Not just like the people who signed those contracts, they're fine, they made their money, they're going to walk away. But other people who were starting to come into their own on Mixer, they're screwed. They have to start from the beginning again, and that sucks. And I know people are saying, well, their audiences will follow them to Twitch and everything like that. It's not that easy. I'll be shocked if 10% of the people who follow them on Mixer follow them to Twitch.
Because they most likely the audience that was watching on Mixer were doing that because they didn't want to on Twitch.
Yeah. And it was just so abrupt and unceremonious.
Right, there was like no build up, no lead. Like the streamers themselves found out the same time the public did. It was just a nightmare.
Yeah, there was no, hey, in a year we're shutting this down. It wasn't like a slow gradual wind down. It was just like done. And that
employees show up to work and the doors are locked, kind of thing.
There is a certain, as someone who's had that happen to him, there is a certain callousness behind it that was unpalatable. You're kind of expecting it to happen, but not that soon. Yeah, no, exactly. It just, I'm not surprised that Mixer shut. It was its suddenness and its like the callousness, I think, is a good way of describing it. That really caught me off guard. David?
All right, so this is too big of a topic, and I'm not going to tackle all of it. I am going to tailor it. But every fucking thing was canceled. We know why, right? The entire world shut down. But every single in-person event that you could think of that related to video games or even something adjacent didn't happen this year.
Right.
There was no PAX, there was no E3, there was no Gamescom, there was no Tokyo Game Show, there was no anything.
All of these exciting moments that we normally like you and I have been doing PAX together for a couple years now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That got shut down. E3, which is supposed to be like the big rollout of all this cool shit, that got canceled, went digital only, and not really a good digital only showing either. We
didn't get to go to Elephant and Castle and get scotch.
I know. Way overpriced scotch.
I know, but still, it's like a tradition.
Yeah. So, no, I absolutely agree.
That's not...
That is on my list, actually.
That's not specifically what I was going to talk about. I wanted to bring that up because it's a big topic and there's a lot we can talk about there. But a lot of things went online. There's a bunch of stuff we can talk about in that region. But what I want to talk about, the things that hit me, were the tournaments. Like the weird pseudo death of esports, where esports went to online tournaments. And one of the things that I would do, because I'm a guy that likes fighting games, is I would go to the local regional tournaments near me and watch the fighting game players because it's awesome. I can see people that are ridiculously good at things from all over the world play in just this little tournament, and it was flipping awesome. And being there with all the people and yelling at the screen and watching it all happen. And my
I don't
entire
do this
plan for
stuff,
this year,
and I showed up with you to the Capcom Cup that one year, and I had a blast, and I had no idea what was going on, but you could feel the energy in the room, and you can't help but get sucked into it.
It's so much fun. And one of the things that really sucked for me is I was super excited to try and finally get to an Evo this year. And not only was that entire tournament canceled, one of their co-founders had to resign from everything for some really, really bad shit. And I don't want to get into all that. You can go find our episode on that guy. I'm not even going to say his name, but long story short, one of the co-founders, really bad dude, and Evo just did not really survive it very well.
Yeah, the fate of Evo itself is in serious question right now. It might never come back.
And it sucks because it's an event that's always been, not too far from me, right? I can get on a plane and get there in however long, and it's just a bummer that it happened this year and that I probably missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of the coolest events that I can think of is going to a big tournament with fighting games and just being in the crowd and eating generic, expensive, crappy food from a stadium and just, I don't know, man.
You're buying $10 worth of shit pizza, but it's $10 worth of shit pizza at an event you want to be at, and that makes it taste all
surrounded by people that desperately want to be there just as much as I do.
No, that was definitely a punch to the nuts for sure. Just for me, the cancellation of all the events, but you for specifically, I can see that the Evo might not even come back again, and that sucks. What a bad way to limp out. Same with E3. Mike No Play in chat says E3 failed anyways, to me at least, with all the big names. Only Microsoft left. You call it the Microsoft Game Show, and I don't even think E3 will even if everything else opens up again in 2021. I don't think E3 will ever have a physical presence again.
And how much other bad stuff happened just related to E3?
Yeah. That's COVID aside, all the other shit that's happened with them for sure. David?
Yes.
One of my worst moments, well, not my personal worst moment, I should clarify, but what I think is one of the worst moments in gaming in 2020 was the Last of Us 2 leak.
It pissed off so many people. To get a huge leak with no context, and just everybody fucking hated that game before it even came out.
Yes. Now, I don't care too much for that game for many other reasons, but that certainly poisoned the well. Not only did it poison the well for the game, because a game like that really does rely on having no knowledge on what's about to happen. It's like watching The Sixth Sense for the first time and knowing how the ending is.
It's going to a new Christopher Nolan movie and knowing everything that's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's not the same.
So I feel bad for the developers. I feel bad for Naughty Dog when that happened. And the fucking discourse that happened afterwards.
Man, is this going to be one of those times where we get really, really sad about quote-unquote gamers with a capital G?
It's not just... like I will throw everyone under the bus on this. Gamers with a capital G. The fucking journalists who, if you say, I don't like the way this looks, who jump down your throat for fucking saying all these horrible names in the book. Everyone went to their extreme corners on this. This became one of those fucking culture war topics that I can't goddamn stand. And you can't just take a nuanced look at it. You have to be fully on board on one side or fully bored on the other side, or you're either a racist or a cuck or a beta or some fucking SJW. And I fucking hate that kind of bullshit. We can no longer have a reasoned discussion on something. It was so bad that... if you notice, we didn't really talk about The Last of Us 2 leak on this show all that much. I mentioned it happened, and we never went back to it. Because I did not even want to wade into that conversation. And I wanted to. But the discourse around it was such a flaming bag of shit, I just stayed away. I was like, nope, I'm out. Fuck it.
Yeah, no, that one was rough. That being said, I thought the whole playing the guitar thing was neat, but the game was a little too dark.
If you want like legitimate complaints from it, the game being dark, that's fine. I get why that's a personal taste. I was fine with it. I just didn't like the fact that it felt like I was playing the same game twice. I felt like the game was told out of order. It should have been the second half first and the first half second. The pacing was all over the place. I didn't think it was actually
There's a million
scripted
movies
that
that do
well.
that, so that doesn't bother me. But as a general rule, I don't like games where you have to be mean to animals.
Yeah, you're mean to a lot of animals in that game.
That's outside of my interests, and I will pass.
Fair enough. I can also talk about how I felt like that game was designed specifically to be the video game equivalent of Oscar Gold.
Yeah.
Where the only people that really like it are the critics, but no one else kind of really enjoyed it all that much. I'm using no one, like no one in quotes kind of thing, before everyone goes, I liked Last of Us too. I'm like, okay, congratulations.
Well, I mean, everybody can like what they like.
Yeah.
You like plenty of stuff that I think is absolute garbage.
Oh, yeah,
and I like
absolutely.
good video games.
but you know what I mean when I say the video game equivalent of Oscar Gold, right? Where it felt like it was designed to be critic bait, really, not necessarily. Yeah. But all that aside, specifically the leak and the discourse that happened around that was just it once again brought, as much as I love the Among Us story and the Doom Animal Crossing story, this showed us that horrible side of the gaming industry, from top to bottom, and it was fucking disgusting. I have one more left, David. What about you?
I got two.
All right, why don't you go do yours, and then I'll do mine, and you'll wrap it up.
All right. So I think I'm going to do it in this order because I really want to end with a whimper, much like the year. But one thing that absolutely pissed me off that I feel like we don't talk about enough. I mean, obviously we talked about it, but the rise of adding in bullshit post-release. And I'm talking about not just Assassin's Creed and the fucking XP leak and all the DLC being added after the fact. I'm going all the way back and talking about the fact that Doom added de novo a month later. And we've had so many video games come out this year where you get one version of the game that comes out, even with a day one patch, and that's the one the reviewers get, and that's the one everybody talks about, and that's
looking at you, Cyberpunk.
And then, in Cyberpunk's a totally different story because that's just lying out of the gate. The version everybody got on day one already sucked. I'm talking about the games that came out great and had more shit added to them after the fact that was shady, bullshitty, shenanigans filled. And I don't like that. And there's currently absolutely nothing that prevents any of the companies from doing this besides fan backlash, which in this case, we got lucky. People were so pissed at Doom adding de novo after the fact that they pulled it less than a week later.
What I'm referring to...
That does not mean that they're going to stop trying.
There's plenty of games. I don't have the examples off the top of my head because I wasn't expecting to go into this topic, but we have talked about it over the year where a company knows if we put this in the game, it's going to give us bad press. So don't put it in there yet. Wait a couple weeks and then shift it in there. And it could be anywhere from de novo to other anti-cheat software.
To loot boxes happening a month later.
Yeah, to paid microtransactions being crammed into the game later, to announcing... oh, goddamn, I can't remember what else. I'm just going to leave it by the wayside right now. But there is a lot of this shit that... The reason why it wasn't in at launch is because they know it's shit that's going to piss people off.
Yep. And they can get more money for it later.
Yes.
This could even go to Pokemon and the what the hell do they call that? The National Pokedex thing or whatever they added.
Yeah, there was
a subscription or some shit. Earlier. There was just I didn't write them all down. I didn't want to sit here and do an exhaustive amount of research on what I'm just going to bitch about, but
it happened addition enough of unpopular elements into games after they have released.
Yep. It's something that has been kind of the writing on the wall, but I feel like it kind of got a bit of a stride this year, and I'm concerned about what we're going to get in 2021.
I consider that part of the whole deceptive practices in general conversation, which is why I mentioned Cyberpunk, because from the reviewer side of things, they sent out specifically only PC versions of that game for review, and they did it in just enough time to actually get something rushed out and written. While deliberately withholding knowledge of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, whatever the previous Xbox generation consoles of it was. There is this fucked up thing where companies at this point realize gamers are kind of wise to their bullshit, so they're just adding shit in after the game is bought. And that, I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that shit in 2021. because there's really nothing you can do about it after they got their money other than just not buy their game to begin with.
Yep. And then minor clarification for chat: Doom Eternal did not launch with Denuvo; it was added after the fact.
Yes.
We had a whole big article on it back in like March.
Yeah, we actually did a rather big story on it. It took up a good chunk of that show because we both, as PC gamers, vehemently hate Denuvo.
Yep.
It is a program that can literally kill your system.
Yeah, it causes loss of frame rates, and since that's all we're ever hunting for.
Yeah, we're PC gamers. We really care about frame rates. Fuck that.
Right?
David, my last worst story of 2020, and this is already continuing in 2021 with Nintendo buying Next Level Games. That's the death of the indie and middle market through consolidation of corporations, where everyone is getting
that's a
bought
good one.
by
You know what?
everything.
You know how close I was to writing this down? I'm glad you put it down.
I have a list.
It's a fucking problem.
This is shit that was bought up by bigger name publishers in 2020, and it is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. But let's start with things that were bought by Tencent. Funcom, the makers of Age of Conan, Secret World, all that good stuff. Leilu, the guys that make Warframe. 10 Chambers, the guys that make GTFO, a great 4-player Left 4 Dead clone, by the way.
Minor clarification before you get called out for being wrong. Digital Extremes makes Warframe, and they were bought by Leilu earlier in the year.
Fair enough. Leilu now, long story short, Digital Streams is now owned by Tencent.
Yes, that is correct.
Voodoo, who is a big casual mobile gaming company. Platinum, although I will say Platinum has an agreement to be Tencent has agreement to be their publisher, not ownership. I expect that to change in 2021. Jaeger, this is the company that made Spec Ops The Line. Marvelous, these are the anime-tastic developers that do Story of Season and a whole bunch of JRPG-ish games. Focus Home Interactive, another big publisher, they ended up buying Deck 13. These are the guys that make The Surge. Embracer Group, aka part THQ Nordic and all their other subsidiaries. 4A Games got bought by them. They're the guys that make Metro. New World Interactive, Vertigo Games, 34 Big Things, Mad Hat Games, Snapshot Games, Zen Studios, Flying Wild Hog, which makes my beloved Shadow Warrior series. Microsoft fucking bought all of Bethesda. That includes Bethesda GameWorks, Bethesda Game Studios, Tango GameWorks, id Software, Arcane, Machine Games. All that's now Microsoft. EA fucking outbid 2K to buy Codemasters, one of the last few remaining independent racing games, developers of racing games out there. Now EA owns I think didn't you do the percentage on it? Isn't 88% of all racing games are now owned by EA?
It's a lot, but as long as you're discounting mobile games and really, really cheap stuff.
I mean, Devolver bought Crow Team. Oculus bought Ready at Dawn. Congratulations to everyone who got rich off all this, but I am really concerned about watching the emerging middle market and indie development game studio just get fucking wiped out by all of this. Now, it is a bit early for me to put on the Doom glasses for some of these games. For example, I don't think Devolver is going to fuck over Crow Team. I have faith in Devolver. I don't think Oculus is necessarily going to screw over the people at Ready at Dawn. But anyone that was bought by Tencent,
you're nervous about.
I have feared Tencent for going on 4 years now, and I am right to do so.
It's the problem that we had with the post.com boom, where really the goal was to make an internet-based company that was successful enough that you get bought by Google, and then you stop working or doing anything because you made it.
Yeah.
And it's coming over into the video game industry where you just get a project big enough that one of the big guys buys you, and then you don't really need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, you just peace out. And
so it's not necessarily, I don't like one fucking company owning every single company because that's just a monopoly, but with extra steps. That withstanding, I worry about the quality of the follow-up products after,
Same here.
It just gets homogenized into the corporate machine of video game by committee.
Yeah, I have seen too many examples of this happening where I can't be worried about all these. And I love some of these. I know you love Warframe.
Yep.
I'm worried. I am worried about Warframe. I am worried about the future of GTFO now. I am worried about how the Metro games are going to go. I am worried about, to a lesser degree, I'm kind of worried about Bethesda. I have a little bit more faith in Microsoft's owning Bethesda, then I would say, once again, Tencent owning Funcom. But this is a trend that is gaining speed. And this is going to lead to I'll go ahead and give you an early tease of one of my predictions in 2021. I think one of these big publishing groups is going to go under and declare bankruptcy. And they're going to take all the shit they bought with it.
Ooh, spoiler alert.
And that is what I'm really concerned about.
All right.
David, bring us home with the worst of 2020.
So this is obviously a subjective list. This is nowhere near the worst thing that happened this year. It's just the worst thing that happened to me. And much like this game, this isn't going to be a good end of the list, but PSO2 finally coming out for US release is the worst thing that happened to me this year. So for those that don't know, Phantasy Star Online 2 is a game that's been out in Japan for like 10 fucking years. And Microsoft finally partnered with them and Sega to bring the game over. It was part of the, it's going to come out on Xbox. We're going to get it on PC. It finally happened. It looks the same. It's a 10-year-old video game. It plays like a 10-year-old video game, but it doesn't matter. We got it. I had so many friends that were so excited for this because I was a huge PSO kid way back in the day, back when, you still had to turn the phone off so you could plug the Dreamcast into the internet. And it released exclusive to the Windows Store. Not the Xbox app, not Steam, not anything useful, to the Windows Store as a buggy, hot mess that was so fucking broken, I had to format the hard drive I had it installed on. And I'm not joking.
I didn't know that. That's impressive.
It was just a clusterfuck, and I wanted to play that game so bad, and there was so many workarounds
waiting for that back when GameCube games were still being sold.
Yeah, I was super excited for it, and it's just the not the fact that it came out in such a bad shape, but it took so long for it to happen, and most of the problems are directly related to the fact that it came out on the Windows Store, and the fact that the better version of the game was seriously just using the English patch from one of the modders who had fixed the Japanese version of the game was still the better way to do it, and all the work and extra bullshit you had to do to play that was easier to get running than the Windows Store release. And at this point, yeah, now it's on Steam, but I just couldn't be. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, its time has come and gone. You're done.
Yeah, I don't care. That game's over. They have this whole big graphics patch coming out early next year. I could care less. It just sucked, man. It just sucked.
I'm sorry that it was so hard on you, David.
I know. I am too.
I say that only half jokingly, because I get the feeling of we all have our Cyberpunk moment when a game that we're all really excited for comes out and it's just kind of not what was promised. But it hurts even more when it's something like that. When it's something smaller scale that only you really like. It feels like they're personally attacking
it's not that
you.
the game was in development for 10 years and then it came out a broken, buggy mess. That's one thing, right? I can be pissed about that for a different reason. This is a game that I knew that was out, that was popular, that did well in its region, that played well where it was out, that I just could not play without extra steps.
That's unfortunate. David, who knows if you'll ever actually get this game finally up and running, if you're interested to come back to it or not. It could be years from now, it could be months, hell, it could be by the end of this week. In the meantime, though, what can you play to keep yourself occupied as you maybe one day consider going back to Phantasy Star Online 2?
I mean, I would just go back over this last year and buy the stuff that came out at the beginning because it's cheaper
David,
now.
just say goddamn new releases. We're at the end of the goddamn show, and I want to go.
Going to new releases. There's not that much. Come on, it's the beginning of January. There's no video games. Blacksmith of the Sound Kingdom comes out for Xbox One and PC. This is a party-based isometric 2D RPG. Become the court blacksmith, adventuring in the Sand Kingdom. Look at it. If you need a 2D RPG in your life right now, then here's one that's new.
I'm literally going to say, I'm going to say right now that these 3 games are on this list solely because nothing else came out.
Gotta talk about something. Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest comes out on Switch. This has obviously been on PC for a while with positive reviews. Explore the myths and monsters of Europe's last primeval wilderness. Play as Maya, who arrives at the ancient Buzwayilwa. I don't know how to say that. It's Polish, maybe. Bialawazia forest. I don't know how to pronounce anything.
I'm very curious to see what it is now.
Here, I'll give you some help. It'll be right. There you go.
That is definitely Polish. I'm almost positive that's Polish. I'm backing off my definitely to almost positive. Oh, nope, it's Polish. It's absolutely Polish.
Cool. Anyway, it's an adventure game inspired by the tabletop role-playing game Werewolf the Apocalypse. So set in that universe. And then finally, Iris.Fall, PS4, Xbox One, Switch. This was on PC as well. This is an indie horror game. Very, very stylish art style. Puzzle adventure game with a spellbinding theme of light and shadow. A lot of it looks to take like a black and white appearance with almost like a drawn art style. And it looks pretty neat. I probably won't play it, but you might because you like things that are spooky.
I do. This game did look kind of interesting, but I think I am going to let it go by the wayside. I'm going to take this time to start clearing out my backlog. David?
Yes.
That does it for new releases, which means that also does it for the end of the show. This has been GamePoints episode 246, and thank you all for showing up to it. We do try to stream this live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at twitch.tv/GamePoints, where you can join the conversation like so many of you did today in chat. It's always good to have an interactive chat when we do this. But if you can't join us live, you can also watch old episodes over at youtube.com/GamePointsPC. Regardless of where you're at, join the conversation, comment down below. Feel free to support the show with likes, follows, subs, bits, all that good stuff. And of course, there is a Discord server you can join. I'll be back with regular gaming streaming Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday, and then we'll be back with the next episode on Tuesday, where we'll be talking about our predictions for 2021. And if I can find our predictions for 2020, we'll go over that and see how accurate we were. Yes, this is that time of the year when we do all the filler bullshit, because no one is talking about anything.
We got to do something.
You got to do something, because we have to go online when we can. Anyways, thank you all for showing up. If you want to follow myself, you can do so at CapitalistPig21 on Twitter, or David Smith there at _Satori. We're out of here. Have a good night. Take care. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon.